the Foundation Studio on Biloxi's Back Bay. Welcome to a special hunting safety edition of SuperTalk Outdoors, where we celebrate every Monday at noon the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. Hey, I want to thank my friend Steve Azar, who's letting us use as the theme song for SuperTalk Outdoors, One Mississippi. What a great song that is. You'll hear it in the intros and as we go out to break during the show. That's an amazing song. You should go look it up. Steve Azar, the music and cultural ambassador for the state of Mississippi. And the name of the song is One Mississippi. Hopefully it will be the state's song at some point. Hopefully it will. That's my hope. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi network. And if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, it's November the 15th, 2021. Deer season's in full swing in most of the state of Mississippi, or at least soon will be. And fishing along the coast and the backwaters of the coast of Mississippi is also in full swing. Man, how time flies. I mean, it's amazing, really. Where did 2021 go? Fall's in the air. Winter is approaching. You know, it's really a magical time of year in Mississippi, especially if you love to hunt and fish. It's that time of year that we're also making giving thanks a priority. You know, my son Jordan and his friend Leland spent some time out at Horn Island yesterday, and they caught a few specks. And as you saw from that picture just in, Jordan caught a what is probably going to be a state record lizard fish. I also spent some time at my place in the Delta this past weekend. We call it Delta Bluffs. My friend Terry Waldrop and I were on a youth hunt mission, actually, with my nephews, Nico and Peter Bohanovich. It was a great weekend. Terry and I had nothing less than our tanks by the time we got to the end of the weekend, I can assure you that. But we wouldn't change a friend. We wouldn't change a thing. We made some incredible memories. And judging by the number of families that we saw on the drive back to the coast, we weren't alone in enjoying a weekend with kids. You know, it's really great to see so many kids spending time in the woods together with their families. I think really the key to Mississippi's conservation efforts is in our kids. By the way, if you haven't, you'll be hearing me talk more about the Mississippi Stewardship Trust Fund that passed the House earlier this year, 117-2, but didn't make it through the Senate. This is really landmark legislation that will have a generational conservation impact in our state. It will also set the stage to get millions of federal matching funds. This legislation is going to come back up again in this next legislative session. And I wonder, how can anyone be not for taking Mississippi's conservation efforts to a new level? We'll talk more about the trust fund in the coming months. But like I said before, this show is mostly about the amazing people who are making our love of Mississippi's outdoors, or helping take our love of the outdoors to a next level. But from time to time, we are going to talk about why what happens in Jackson and Washington should matter to outdoorsmen and women in the state of Mississippi. So now let's move on to our special safety edition of SuperTalk Outdoors. And I want to welcome first up is Captain Megan Fedrick, who's the Director of Hunter and Boater Education for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Megan, how are you doing?
Hey, doing great. Glad to be here.
Good to see you. So for the Facebook and YouTube audience, I can see sort of some important stuff in the background. Where are you located right now?
So I am at our headquarters in Jackson, Mississippi, which is on Eastover Drive, right next door to the School for the Blind and Deaf.
Yeah, so you've been with the department for 22 years. Where's home for you?
I was born or raised in Coahoma County on Moon Lake, and I currently live right here in a suburb of Jackson.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. Where did your love of the outdoors come from?
So, like I said, I grew up in Moon Lake, if anybody knows where that is, out in the middle of nowhere. My dad is an avid hunter. So grew up out in the country, barefooted for probably the first 12 years of my life. Always been interested in critters and being outdoors. So I don't know if I knew I was exactly going to do this. It kind of came as a surprise. I got an internship with the agency when I was a senior in college. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in biology. So kind of led me in that direction. A position opened up and they said, hey, why don't you apply? And next thing you know, you're in the police academy. So there it is.
There it is. Look, it's really interesting to look at the Department of Wildlife Fisheries and Parks. There's so many dimensions to that organization, and you've had an opportunity to see it from so many different, positions.
I've been in three of the 5 bureaus.
Yeah, 3 of the. So tell, what are those? Tell me where you've been.
So when I started, I was hired as a biologist, and at that time, all biologists were also field officers. So I started out in fisheries and worked for years on the lakes and rivers of the Mississippi Delta. And I also worked a stint with our Natural Science Museum as an educator and eventually became head of their education department. And then I switched back over to take over Hunter Ed and also helped with officer training for the last 6 years. So
Wow.
a lot of different facets, a lot of different puzzle pieces that have to go together to make everything work.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done over your many years. When we're enjoying the outdoors, it's amazing when things go as planned. But from time to time, things don't go as planned, and that's where you guys come in. Not only it's important for hopefully we can be proactive about things
Correct.
like safety management, and not regret something where we dropped our guard. But it's interesting. You've seen situations where people were well trained and had accidents, and you've seen people who weren't trained at all have accidents. But in all those cases, people can get lax, can't they? And it's important to do a good reminder from time to time, isn't it?
That is very true. You become complacent. We always tell parents, hey, take Hunter Ed with your kids, sit through the class again. It will not hurt a thing. Take it with your grandchild. This is stuff you probably haven't heard in 10, 15, 20 years. It will not hurt you to hear it again.
It will not hurt you to hear it again. It's interesting, Megan. I shared this on a prior show, but we went out to take one of our shooting houses that had been in position for quite a while, had treated material 4x4 legs, like you see all the time, and we lifted it because we wanted to balance it better. But when we lifted it, we noticed that even though it's treated material, one of the legs had begun to rot, and we didn't know that. And I think people have a tendency to put the shooting houses in place and then really not come back to them anytime soon. But whether it's putting new straps on a leaning ladder stand, or whether it's checking the legs on a shooting house, whether it's just sitting down with your family and saying, look, I know everybody understands the safety, but let's remind ourselves what this is all about. You have, in your 22 years, you've seen some pretty bad mishaps, haven't you?
So you mentioned deer stands and ladder stands, and I guess a lot of people, when they think about an incident, just assume that it's firearms related. And actually in Mississippi, the majority of our incidents, which we say incidents, a lot of things are not necessarily an accident, but it usually has to do with tree stand and tree stand safety. And people will assume that just because they put a shoot house out that it's going to last forever, or that the straps are not going to dry rot. And we see that all the time where something fails, it hasn't been checked, and then we end up with a fall and a serious injury.
Yeah, one of the stands that we have. Well, first of all, we check straps every year. We put 2 straps on every leaning ladder stand, and we've put the kind of permanent ropes on now that are part of the safety systems that you have. So you put your vest on, you connect to it as you're going up. That's a requirement. But this is a club, but it's really a family club. But man, we want to have fun. We want to make great memories, and we don't want to have an accident. And when you look at the statistics on the number of people, just as you pointed out, that are involved in non-gun accidents, it's alarming, isn't it?
It is. Like I said, it usually surprises folks, and I don't know that we actually get reported. It is required by statute that we should be told that these happen so we can investigate them, but I don't know that we get every tree stand fall reported to our agency. So there's probably more than we are aware of. If the local SO or hospital doesn't report it, we may hear about it secondhand and try to follow up. But that does happen a lot more than you would typically think. Yet, not to alarm anyone, overall hunting in general, the incident number is lower than, say, bowling. I mean, it's a very low number nationwide, and that's why the Hunter Ed program has worked so hard over the last 70 years to reduce those numbers, and that's what it's here for.
Yeah, I sent a note to, again, this little club that I have is family and just really close friends, but I sent a note to them just reminding them, as I was concentrating on this show, and we were going to have a the safety show. It got me thinking that I need to remind the people who hunt with me some of the basics. For example, people tend to they'll keep some shells in a clip and not have one inside the breech. And they should not have a loaded gun in any stretch of the imagination. Hey, why don't we do this, Megan? When we come back on the other side, we'll finish our conversation, and then we'll move over to Dean Hudson. I look forward to visiting with him during this next section. But when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Megan Fedrick, and we'll continue the special edition of Safety here on SuperTalk Outdoors. We'll see you after this break.
It's SuperTalk Outdoors with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors from the Foundation Studio. The Foundation for Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks uniquely positioned to provide incredible financial assistance to the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Separate organization, a foundation composed of board members who are volunteers from across the state, who raise millions of money to help the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, reach its goal of being the best they can be to protect our opportunity to enjoy the outdoors in Mississippi. We wouldn't be where we are if it weren't for the foundation. So anyway, let's continue our conversation with Megan Fedrick. And, she has such a key role in safety instruction in this state. But Megan, when we talk about safety and the work that you do and the instructions that you do, it's not just about gun safety and stand safety and hunting safety. There's a lot more to it than that, isn't it?
There really is. And a lot of people I even tell people, if you don't hunt and you have an opportunity to go to a hunter safety class, you will leave with something new that you have learned. It's everything from how to survive cold weather, first aid, conservation. What does our agency do, and how does it help manage wildlife populations? Ethics, how to be a responsible and respectful hunter. We are not out there just to kill animals for the sake of killing. There's have a clean kill, fair chase, so many different parts of the equation that go together to have a respectable and safe hunt and an enjoyable time. And most importantly, we want you to go out and go hunt, and we want you to pass it on to the next generation, but we want you to go home safely every single day.
No doubt. And conservation is so important as it relates to that. We'll be spending time on future shows talking about that and the incredibly important role the agency plays in helping people who even have, private landowners manage the wildlife on their property in a way that we can optimize the opportunities to enjoy them. So why don't we do this, Megan? Why don't you stay with me, please? And let's invite Dean Hudson to join us. Dean has been with the agency for 31 years, and he'll be retiring at the end of January, 2022. And so he's got a really important role, doesn't he, Megan?
Oh, he really does. He's been a great educator as an officer for us, and I hate to see him go.
Wow, that's a pretty tough thing to follow right there, isn't it, Dean?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Ricky.
It's good to see you, my friend.
How you doing?
So tell us about what you do, Dean.
I'm currently the Monroe County Conservation Officer here in Monroe County, on the east side of North Mississippi, just below Tupelo. Our main area here is the Amory and Aberdeen area.
Yeah, that's a beautiful area of the country, isn't it? I mean, the fall is in the air there, isn't it?
Yes, sir. I like to think so.
Yeah, I know you do. So, what do you, in your day-to-day world, what do you do?
I'm the with being the county conservation officer, we deal with a variety of different things. Of course, field complaints and investigate different things. The center of this is a unique county in the Tombigbee River, and the waterway splits this county, and it's two different worlds. The east side of this county is hill country. A lot of pine trees. You cross that river, and it's all open farmland, prairie type land. It's the hunting scenarios are 100% different. You have two different type of hunting, two different type of people. But the center of this hunting world here centers around the canal section management area and all of our open public land along the river.
Well, you've been with the agency for 31 years, and you'll be retiring soon. But when you look back, what is it about Mississippi's outdoors that's in your heart and soul?
I was raised by my grandparents, and they, hunting was a big thing that we did. I mean, we had 2 TV channels, and I mean, you got up and you went hunting. I had a couple of uncles that were instrumental in it. Now, my grandfather was for lack of a better word, my grandfather was the law. And I grew up at Nettleton, Mississippi, sitting inside the police department. And when I wasn't there, I was in a deputy car with the sheriff's office. And I'm talking 12 years old, riding shotgun. So I've done this my whole life. And I really, we hunted, we fished, and really enjoyed it. And some of my first memories is there being an incident calling for the game warden out of Lee County to come. The club needed the game warden, and I remember the guy coming up, and I thought he was. Of course, I'm 11, 12 years old. He pulls up, old grizzled cowboy-looking guy. I mean, gets a 3-wheeler out of the truck and goes and catches these trespassers, and it made an impression on me.
Wow. Hey, so Megan, you hear this a lot, but as specifically as it relates to Dean, those years of experience really pay off when he's training others and impacting others, doesn't it?
I agree. It really does. When you have that in your background, it really helps you determine what kind of officer you're going to be, or conservationist. You could have many different jobs within this agency, but having that background is important. I hope we're producing more people that will have that background. The trends are not looking that great these days.
Well, we're going to work on that. We're going to work on
Let's work on it.
Inspiring other people to find this as a great potential career, because there's so many opportunities within the department. But Dean, coming back to you, you heard Megan and I talking about stand safety in particular. People think about gun accidents, and they happen. Thank God they don't happen too often, but when they happen, it's terrible. But the thing around stands and stand accidents, when they happen, they can be pretty severe. Tell me about your experience with that.
Well, to follow up on some of what you said, nothing's going to earn the hunt any worse than going out and climbing up. It's opening day Saturday for deer with dog and firearm rifle. And, you got people that are going to go, a little bit earlier than normal and getting their stand, and nothing's going to put a damper on that hunt any worse than getting about the 4th step up, climbing in that shooting house and figuring out that 2x4 that Uncle Jim put there back 30 years ago is rotten. And, I'm going to encourage everyone right now, you need to go this week. We've got good weather. You need to get out there this week. You need to look at these stands, wood rots. And another thing that, and I'm sure this has happened with you in hunting, but, you get out there, you take your child, you get in the shooting house, it's cold, you fire that buddy heater up and the red wash just pour out on you. Now's the time. You need to put a bomb in those houses, get the ladybugs out of them, get the red wash nest out from under the seat. I mean, that's going to ruin a morning hunt. And I mean, there's no way around it. It's going to happen. And, you need to be checking these stands, looking at your straps. You need to pull on them. Straps hang. A lot of guys leave their stand all year. The straps deteriorate. And one thing that I have seen is guys lose their pins. And when you lose those pins out of these bulk tree stands, they're hardened steel. When you go down to the hardware store, and the ones that are sitting on the counter for $1, they're generally not. And I have seen people put those little gold pins in there. I've seen them take these D-rings that they give at the career days and try to put, man, they're made for holding keys, man. They're not made for weight bearing. And I've seen that contribute to accidents. Now's the time to get all this in line.
Dean, I've seen people put kitchen cabinet handles into trees for an extra place to grab onto.
I've got a good story for y'all.
Tell it, Dean.
Several years back, I'm partnered here with Jay Holman in this county, and my phone rang, which is not unusual. And I looked at it, and it was a guy, a hunter there on the public land on the management area. He said, Dean, I need you to come over here. Said, I've got an issue with a tree stand I found. And, first thing I thought was, well, it's got a bait pile under it or something. It's across the property line on the adjacent landowner. But now I rounded Jay up. Me and him went over there. The guy dropped me a pin, and we went in. And went to the stand, looked at it, and Jay said, Dean, is that duct tape? I said, that's duct tape, Jay. And this guy had got to this. We ended up finding the guy. We got the stand down, but we ended up finding the guy. And what had happened, he went in to hunt, and he lost his straps or dropped them or whatever, I forget, but he had a roll of duct tape. So he put a lock-on stand up and 6 or 7, strands of duct tape around it to hold it with the intention of, I'm going to come back and put my straps on it. The problem is on public land, that's not necessarily your stand. If somebody else wants to get in it, they can. I mean, here you got a lock-on stand 20 feet off the ground that's being held by four circles of duct tape. Not a good idea. And, we got it down and averted that accident. But, that's what we're working against is, it's the holidays, Ricky. Everybody's looking forward to it. It's hunting season. Spending the holidays in the hospital with 2 broke legs is not good, and it affects you and it affects the officer.
I know it does, man. Megan, when you think about this story he just told, especially as it relates to public land, I'll be interested to know, we'll continue this part of the conversation. We come back from break on the other side, but I'd be interested in knowing how many times you guys have been involved in conflict of some sort related to a stand that's been erected on public land, and remind people what the rules are related to that. But this is a special safety edition of Super Talk Outdoors. We want people to enjoy the outdoors, to be safe in the outdoors, to be able to go home to their family, to make great memories, not bad memories. Safety is so important. We're going to continue the conversation when we come back after this break. We'll see you in just a second.
Out on his limb, whistling that sweet soul for him. I said 3 Mississippi to this land called home. I'll breathe Mississippi till I'm dead and gone. Just carry on, I'll carry on, Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors, sponsored by the Foundation. I have Megan Fedrick and Dean Hudson with me, and we're going to finish our conversation. And in just a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Chris Reed, and we're going to continue this special edition of safety, hunter safety on Super Talk Outdoors. Anyway, Megan, as you do your work, what do you find that private lands and public land that you deal with different issues when you're doing your work?
So when it comes to hunting incidents, which I assume is what we're getting to here, I would say the majority, I would say if I had to guess off the top of my head, 80% of them are on private land.
Yeah.
And that is just what we see most of the time. Although I know that it's hard to obtain private land, and we have great WMAs and national forests and places for those to hunt that don't have it, I do see the majority of the incidents that occur in Mississippi on private land. And I want to mention before I finish today, like I said, those are low numbers compared to other outdoor recreational activities. We may have 20 a year, and it used to be in the triple digits years ago before we had hunter ed that was required before you could purchase a license. So we have really made strides in keeping those numbers down, but the majority of what I see is on private land.
Well, congratulations on that, by the way. Education, man.
It's not me, but it's 70 years of people working really hard to
That's right. Education is key, and you can't. I think one of the sort of the underlying messages for the show today is that as trained as someone is, it's easy to get lax. It's just easy to get lax, and we're trying to remind people the basics again, for sure. So I think it's important that the department's been focused on that over all these years. So coming over to you, Dean, when you think about private land and public land, as it relates specifically to public land, you mentioned that story about masking taping that stand. But do you find that there's conflict from time to time on private land, and how do you manage that?
Of course, there's always conflict on private land, and generally with that being a trespassing issue. This time of year, especially with duck season coming in my part of the world, we'll have a lot more conflicts probably on the public land here. A lot of our private landowners and clubs, they police themselves. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a call from the club president or from the sheriff's office where they've called 911 requesting the game warden or deputies to come there, and they will have somebody, for lack of a better saying, they'll have them bound up and holding them at the camp house for you to get there. And a lot of the big clubs here will police themselves, and but on public land, it's a race. It's a race to the duck hole, and sometimes tempers flare. I mean, there's only so many places on the lake that you can get and hunt.
And that is probably one of the incidents I see, Dean, occasionally on a WMA is usually duck hunting. People fighting over the same spot.
We got people leaving the boat ramp, getting there early morning to beat everybody to the river. And I want to ask the captain too to touch on this. We were talking about stands and wasp and straps. Look, make sure you have your life jackets in that boat. You've got guys going out here. They're wearing waders. They've got shell bandoliers tied to them, duck calls, gear, backpacks. You fall in that water. It's cold. Don't get lax and not check your life jackets. The same thing. Check the straps. Make sure they'll float you. Make sure you got one that'll fit you. I have checked guys pull up to a boat and be 3 guys in there, 250-pound plus men, and ask them for an adult. Need an adult wearable life jacket for each person. Have them hand me 2 extra larges, and then some guy pull up a Minnie Mouse little child, with the back head deal on it and all, and this is my life jacket. That's not going to work. And
Megan, I had Chuck Cage on from the Delta. He has a duck guide service in the Delta, and he said he likes to go to timber bottoms where you can stand in the water. It scares him to go to the river on a regular basis because it can be so dangerous. I mean, that's a really good point we need to make, isn't it?
Oh, I would not want to be on the river, especially in low temperatures. But we've unfortunately had, in the last 3 or 4 years, probably 4 drownings that people were duck hunting or either scouting to duck hunt. And that is the last thing I want to see. I know recreation is important, but your safety is more important. Make sure you've got all the things you need before you go. If you get to the boat ramp and you don't have a life jacket, go back home and get it. That duck is not worth you not coming home that evening.
No, it's not. Well, listen, Megan Fedrick, we look forward to having you back on again since you're in such a critical position with Director of Hunter and Boater Education. And Dean, you're about to retire. Maybe we can get you on the show one more time and talk about some war stories. I'm sure you've got some good ones to tell, my friend.
Sir, you talk to these people that are above me, and I'll be glad to.
For sure. Megan, were you going to say something else?
No, I was going to say, if we tell him to, he's going to have to do it. He's only got 2 months left. We could have him on every Monday.
Good. We definitely look forward to that. Anyway, it's good to see you guys. Now we're going to shift gears now and move over to Major Chris Reed. He's been with the agency for 16 years. He's a regional administrator of law enforcement. And by the way, I was doing some reading about you, Chris, and you've also been active in the Law Fit Challenge, which we'll come to that in just a second. But how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you, Ricky?
I'm doing great. I should say this afternoon. It's great to see you, my friend. Tell me about what you do.
So I guess now my main objective is just to make sure that the areas are getting covered in our central region enforcement district of the state, and making sure that people are getting the tools that they need, the resources they need, and we're trying to cover this central part of the state adequately, so the sportsmen and women of this state can know that their resources are being protected, and that they're going to be there when they go out to go hunting on those days that they show up. And so it's changed a bit from what it was in the past, and that's okay, and it's a good thing. And so the things in the past have helped kind of bring some different element and perspective to how we try to treat the people that we run into, and make sure that, like Dean and Megan were saying before that people are having an enjoyable experience in the outdoors.
Yeah, it's so important. It'd be interesting to me to hear more about as we get ready. Of course, we're youth season and both seasons have been ongoing, and then for most of the state we're headed toward the opening of gun season. Is there a lot of planning that you guys are doing around that? Do you approach your job any differently, given that this is the sort of the full bore of hunting season in the state, or is it another day in the office?
You know, we have really good officers that work for us, and it's kind of like just placing them and kind of pointing them in the direction, not necessarily pointing, but they know what needs to be done. And they're out in their counties and their areas, and they have a pulse on what's going on. They know where the bad places are that we're having issues with, and they're working those on their own. They're being proactive in that. They're being seen, and which is a main deterrent is visibility, being seen, and people know that people are looking and checking and enforcing regulations. It helps to deter violations. We're not going to eradicate that by any stretch of the imagination, but we can try to be, I guess you could say, I think we've done this well in the past, because everybody thinks that there are game wardens behind every tree when they're going hunting or they're coming out. And I don't want to argue that point. We may be behind every tree, and so it's good just to do what the law says, and to again try to be safe and have a good time outdoors.
So if you think about, what I wanted to do this before I go to the kind of things that you face on a day-to-day basis. What I wanted to make sure people knew, you're involved in the central region. Tell me more about where that is.
So on the map, Washington County is in the northwest corner, goes across to Lowndes County, and then down to about Meridian area, a little south of that, and then draw a line back across to the west side of the state in Warren County. And then you have that little box there in the central part of the state. And so within that region, there's a diversity of terrain and people, because the people in the Delta are not the same as people, on the east side of the state. And so that's very unique. And you enforce things a little differently as far as, the animals they hunt and the places and the way things look.
We're having a conversation on this special safety edition of SuperTalk Outdoors, sponsored by the Foundation, with Chris Reed, who's been with the agency for 16 years. He's currently the Regional Administrator of Law Enforcement Bureau Central Region. And when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation. We want to talk about what are the things he faces, that his team faces on a daily basis. Like what's the one thing people do too often that causes them to get sighted? We'll talk more about that here in just a second. When we come back after this break, we'll see you in just a second.
We live in one of the best places in America to enjoy the outdoors. So let's talk about it. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Mathews on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors, sponsored by the Foundation. We're having a conversation with Chris Reed, who is in the Law Enforcement Bureau Central Region. He's an administrator there, and he's been with the department for 16 years. It was interesting when I was reading about you, Chris. Like me, like so many of us, you fell in love with the outdoors at a young age. It's in your heart and soul, isn't it, buddy?
Yeah, I remember this week, leading up to the opening weekend of gun season, just that Friday being checked out of school and looking forward to the opening morning, not even sleeping at night, just thinking of what the next day, held. And it was a magical time. And, not knowing at that moment how it was forming me and shaping me into what I would grow up and to pursue as a career. And so that is, it's neat to think about the kids and the adolescents that are going out now, spending those moments outdoors, and looking at it from the long view, the long play is, and how that's shaping them. And we just try to be a good influence and a positive influence and interaction when we do encounter those individuals.
So I'm an avid outdoorsman, and so I'm not involved in law enforcement, but over the years, nothing has changed really for me in terms of when fall is in the air and how it makes me feel in this time of Thanksgiving and whatever. Has it changed for you any, or do you just feel it just like you always did?
Well, you work more on the weekends when people are when you used to partake in the hunting. end of it. But you still get to experience some of that camaraderie when you go, when you're not issuing citations, but when you're just checking in and, you're going to maybe catch a breakfast at a camp, going to check a, skin and shed where people are talking over the morning's hunt. You see the excitement on a kid's face. And so you can still vicariously live through those opportunities and those moments. And, while you're sitting there thinking about those young people looking up to you and dreaming maybe of one day, driving in that truck that you're in. And so, there's a weight that goes along with it, but it's not one that we can't hold.
Yeah. I see it clearly. Hey, listen, if you think about citations you have to give, what do you find the biggest challenge being these days?
I think a lot of, our most common citation is going to be not having a hunting license. And for whatever that reason is, some people may just forget and, they go out a year from when they're issued. And so it may be oh man, a month goes by and I forgot I needed to get a hunting license, or, I don't know what the reason is. That's one of them. Other ones are, more intentional, I guess, the headlighting and the hunting over bait or feed, if you will, illegally placed. And then, hunting from the road, and so those are some of the ones that are more intentional. I mean, what you're doing there versus I forgot. And you can tell that, when you're talking and you're doing your interview with the person and speaking with them. So I would say, make sure you're checking that stuff before you go this weekend, because some of those things that we can prevent before you go outdoors. And like I said, it helps have a memorable, positive experience. You don't want to, have a typo, if you will, and forget to check your hunting license and it be out and you get a ticket for it, because we will be out issuing citations. And so, another thing is that's kind of changed, I think, as Dean was talking about, people kind of policing themselves. And, this day and age we live in now, that may not be the best idea, because, people just their disregard for life and personal property seems to just be diminishing exponentially. And so if you can get a tag number, description of the vehicle, and give that to us and let us go out and handle that, we'd hate for someone to run up on somebody and then the worst case scenario plays out. And so
right.
Just remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, that could easily happen when you're sitting over a campfire and somebody hears a shot on the road and they go and they start chasing it, and they're, trying to live out one of those game warden shows they see on TV.
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you never know who you're going to be dealing with, and that's why I think I have so much respect for you and your officers, because you never know. It's just like we have a highway patrolman friend up in Greenwood that spends a lot of time with us, and I think about him all the time. Every time you guys pull someone over or check someone, you have to be on your guard. You don't know what you're going to be dealing with. Anyway, listen, it has been really a special pleasure spending some time with you, Chris Reed, and good luck to you and your team as you approach the gun season starting, and y'all stay safe, buddy.
Well, we thank you, and we'll do our best, and thank you for having us on today.
You bet. So this has been a special edition of Super Talk Outdoors. We didn't try to get into all the details of safety. We just wanted to sort of get that back in the front of your mind. Just stay safe. Stay safe. And if you're in a club or around your family, take a few minutes and just go back to the basics and remind yourselves. Make sure that the stands are safe. Make sure your guns are unloaded when you get done with hunting. Just don't drop the guard. Don't get lax. Stay safe, and God bless you, and have a great day, and we'll see you next Monday.